Texarkana, 1946, a small town straddling the border of Texas and Arkansas. A place where life seemed to be finding its rhythm again. Soldiers had returned home from the ravages of World War II. Young couples courted under the soft glow of the moonlight, and a sense of normalcy and optimism filled the air. It was a community rebuilding its dreams, a picture of post-war American innocence. But that fragile peace was about to be irrevocably shattered by a phantom. An unseen, unheard terror began to stalk the quiet, deserted roads, preying on young lovers seeking a moment of privacy away from watchful eyes. He would come to be known only as the Phantom Killer, and the fear he spread would become an indelible, dark legend, forever haunting the town of Texarkana. The series of brutal attacks that would grip the town in a chokehold of fear began on a cold night in February 1946 and continued its grim march through to May. Over the course of 10 terrifying weeks, the Phantom fixated on the most vulnerable, turning the local lovers' lanes into hunting grounds. 4 young couples were targeted on these secluded, tree-lined roads. Their moments of intimacy transformed into scenes of unimaginable horror. The first attack was on Jimmy Hollis and Mary Jean Larry, ambushed in their parked car. They were assaulted by a man wielding a gun and a flashlight. Though brutalized and terrorized, they miraculously survived the ordeal, becoming the first and only victims who could offer a description, however fragmented, of their attacker. Their survival, however, was a grim anomaly. Just 1 month later, the Phantom struck again, this time with lethal finality. Richard Griffin and Polly Ann Moore were discovered in their car, both shot dead. Their murders marked a horrifying escalation, confirming that a predator was not just assaulting, but executing his victims. The community's unease blossomed into full-blown panic. Then, only a few weeks after, the nightmare repeated itself. Paul Martin and Betty Jo Booker were found, also shot and killed. The pattern was becoming chillingly clear. The killer acted with a swift, merciless brutality, leaving his victims no chance to escape, no opportunity to tell their story. The lovers' lanes, once symbols of romance and youthful freedom, were now synonymous with death, and the moonlight that had once seemed so romantic now felt like a spotlight for a killer lurking in the shadows. The town of Texarkana descended into a state of extreme, collective fear. The Phantom's reign of terror was no longer confined to the remote, unlit roads on the outskirts of town. He was growing bolder, bringing his violence directly to the doorsteps of the community. In his final and most audacious attack, he broke into a rural home, targeting Virgil Starks and his wife. Virgil was shot and killed in his living room chair, while his wife was severely wounded, shot twice in the face before she managed to flee for her life. This home invasion confirmed the town's worst fears. No one was safe. The killer didn't just target couples. He was an indiscriminate force of violence. A suffocating paranoia fell over Texarkana. As darkness fell each night, the entire town went into a self-imposed lockdown. Streets were deserted, businesses closed early, and residents barricaded themselves inside their homes. Gun stores and hardware shops quickly sold out of firearms, ammunition, and locks as citizens armed themselves against the invisible threat. The local police force, overwhelmed and outmatched, was soon joined by the Texas Rangers and the FBI, creating a massive law enforcement mobilization. Yet, despite the intense manhunt, the Phantom Killer remained infuriatingly invisible. He moved like a ghost, leaving behind sparse evidence and a trail of conflicting testimonies from the few who had survived or witnessed something fleetingly. The most defining feature described was a crude white sack worn over his head, with holes cut out for his eyes. A terrifying image that only added to his mythic, monstrous status. No one knew who he was, and with each passing day, the fear intensified, turning a local tragedy into a national obsession. The investigation that followed was a chaotic and frustrating mess, a puzzle with too many missing pieces. The evidence gathered from each crime scene seemed to create more questions than answers. The footprints found at one location didn't match those at another. More perplexing was the weaponry. A different type of firearm appeared to have been used in each of the murders. From a .32 caliber pistol to a .22 caliber automatic and a shotgun. This lack of a consistent modus operandi baffled investigators. Was it one killer meticulously changing his methods, or were they dealing with something even more complex? The evidence was fragmented and often contradictory, leaving police with no clear pattern to follow, except for the terrifying constants. He always attacked at night, on weekends, and always near a deserted road or isolated area. The pressure to find the killer was immense, and law enforcement pursued countless leads. Police suspected many individuals, from jilted lovers to known criminals, but no one could be definitively linked to the crimes. Every promising lead seemed to dissolve under scrutiny. Every potential suspect cleared. The Phantom Killer defied every effort of the combined law enforcement agencies, masterfully evading capture and cementing his legendary status. The inability to unmask him turned the local fear into a national fixation. A grim spectacle watched by the entire country as a small American town was held hostage by an unseen monster. In the desperate search for a culprit, many suspects were investigated, their lives scrutinized for any sign of the darkness that had descended upon Texarkana. Yet none were ever officially charged with the Moonlight murders. The most prominent and enduring suspect was a man named Yowell Swinney, a habitual car thief and small-time criminal with a documented history of violence. His name entered the investigation when his wife, in the midst of their own turbulent and abusive relationship, came forward to police. She reportedly shared incriminating information, suggesting that Swinney was the Phantom. However, her testimony was riddled with inconsistencies, and her credibility as a witness was heavily questioned in court, particularly as she was legally considered a co-conspirator in some of his other crimes. As a result, the case against Swinney for the murders could never be solidified, and he was never charged. Over the decades, various other theories have persisted, each attempting to explain the unexplainable. Some believe it was a single, sadistic killer who simply stopped or moved on. Others have proposed more elaborate theories involving a larger conspiracy or multiple perpetrators working together, but without concrete evidence or a confession. All of these ideas remain pure speculation, whispers in the dark that offer no real answers. The identity of the phantom remains a void, a question mark hanging over the history of the town. More than 70 years have passed since that terrifying spring. The phantom killer of Texarkana remains an unidentified specter, his true name and face lost to time. He vanished from public life as mysteriously and as suddenly as he had appeared, leaving behind a legacy of terror and a community forever changed. Today, Texarkana is a modern, peaceful place, but beneath its quiet surface lies a dark and enduring legend. The case has become an indelible part of American folklore, a chilling cautionary tale that parents tell their children about. The real dangers that can lurk in the dark, a reminder that even in the smallest, most idyllic of towns, evil can take root. This isn't just another unsolved murder case. This is a legend, a true crime story of an invisible predator, the power of collective fear, and an American mystery that still haunts the deserted roads under the moonlight.